moving to the championship game, we've got Ohio State versus Notre Dame. The game I could care less about. I could not care less. And I'm going to watch it mainly because I love college football. But I mean, if a meteor, hit the stadium, wouldn't be sad. Be like, whatever. Lou Holtz will be dragging his body, apparently. I'm not sure if you saw that tweet, to the game. What are you looking out for?
I just got to start driving now because I'm too old to get on an airplane. I have to wear my Depends. If you just sit there and it gets a little turbulent, I'm not going to make it to the lavatory. So make sure I have an entire row for myself. I need special transportation to get to the stadium. I'm just so excited. I haven't been to Atlanta since I coached at South Carolina all those years ago. It might have been when Georgia Tech was still a member of the SEC. I don't remember if they had moved yet, but it's just going to be a great time regardless of what happens in that game. If Notre Dame loses again, it's fine. It's really fine. It just shows that there is a formula now in college football where you could still be good and you could play a cupcake schedule and you could have NBC give you $50 million a year and be competitive.
Yeah. And now they don't even need to stay independent because they've got the extra $20 million from the college football playoff that they don't have to share with anyone else in their conference because they're independent.
How dangerous is this if Notre Dame actually wins this game to be the national champion in terms of what the college football landscape looks like? Because the longest time, everybody was clamoring, college football's passed Notre Dame by. They may look like a good team, and then they get into the college football playoff, or they get into, they get a bid because they're Notre Dame and they play nobody over the course of the regular season.
Well,
that's a winning formula now.
I mean, well, okay. I wanted to talk more about the game, but let's just get into some tinfoil hat theory stuff,
Briefly, then we'll go back to the game. I think they have no chance in hell. I'm going to finally say that Ohio State, I think I've been dogging Ohio State long enough that they can't do it. They're going to do it, and I'm going to hate myself for it, but it's better than the alternative.
Yeah, I'm with you too. I mean, let's just get it out of the way. I think we're both picking Ohio State. We'll talk about how Notre Dame wins and how Ohio State wins after this brief little monologue will go on. But if Notre Dame actually pulls this off, here's where I go with all of this stuff. One, I think the Bears are going to come knocking. I think the Bears are going to be busting down Marcus Freeman's door. And I think Marcus Freeman may actually take it because while I think he does love Notre Dame, that's not his alma mater, and he will have beaten his alma mater to get the national championship. He'll also be the first Black coach to ever win a national championship. There'll just be so many accolades that I think the next logical step is the NFL. And it's not a big move. I mean, South Bend to Chicago is like a 30-minute drive, so it's not like he's moving across the country to like take over the Chargers, like what Jim Harbaugh had to do, So I think, if he wins this, I think it'll be great for Notre Dame. And I know you talk about the landscape of college, but I think it won't really do anything because at that point, I don't think Notre Dame will be able to carry on. Like it's not going to be like they're a powerhouse program. I think this is kind of, and here's the thing too that people have to remember: a lot of Notre Dame's key players and impact players are all like seniors and like fifth-year seniors. Like these aren't young. This isn't like a young unit. These are people who chose to come back for like passed up on the NFL last year to come back this year for this championship. So it's not like, and again, that's not to say that they won't be competitive next year. I think they absolutely will be, but they'll be losing a lot of key players who got them here. So with that in mind, you think about that, the transfer portal, all the stuff that comes along with being a head coach in college football. I wouldn't be surprised if of a bunch of schools, even if he loses though, too, come knocking on Marcus Freeman's door. On top of that, here's where the tinfoil hat theory comes in. If he beats Ryan Day, I don't know if Ryan Day keeps his job, and I would not be surprised if OSU's board of trustees on Marcus Freeman's door. Hey, bud, come back.
I just realized our tinfoil hat theory is gold, like a Notre Dame helmet. That makes me more uncomfortable with this.
The Golden Dome. But like, what if that happens? Because like, look, or here, I got a not kind of like a would you rather, but more of like a what do you think is more likely? What's more likely? That if Marcus Freeman beats Ohio State, that he is interviewed and offered a job at Ohio State or is offered a job from the NFL?
The Bears, I think, will absolutely come calling because that rumor is already starting to happen. But my thought is if Notre Dame wins, two coaches might lose their jobs. If you're saying Ryan Day is one, I think the other one's down in Baton Rouge because
Really?
something tells me you took that job because you're saying nobody can win at Notre Dame.
Mhm.
And if you're telling me that the board of trustees see Notre Dame win a national championship before you do, with all of your resources, all of your money, you're working in the SEC, and I don't know if you saw this story. I saw this come out recently. Brian Kelly's coaching tree is actually pretty damn good underneath him. When he was a coach at Central Michigan, I'm trying to
Right.
remember who was underneath him. A few like really notable names, both in college and in the NFL, were underneath him, and he's always had this reputation of just not being the nicest guy. Apparently, he did like some special like holiday party, and he had his coaches as like valet to like park all the cars. So
Wow.
that way, it was in Central Michigan, and it was. And I have to go back and find it, so I'm not gonna be able to make it for this episode, but I'll find it and share with you privately. It's insane. We look at the like
That's
list of people who are.
wild.
Yeah. So uh if I'm in Baton Rouge and going, well, you told me that's what it was, and apparently that's not the case. There's only one common factor here, bud. That's you.
Yeah,
So that would be
I don't know if he necessarily gets fired immediately, but I definitely think 100% if LSU isn't in contention for the SEC or even the playoffs, I think he's
yeah.
absolutely fired next season 100%. Yeah, I just with Marcus Freeman being an OSU alum, we've seen it. A lot of people like to go home, they like to win and I don't know what his dedication is. I don't know if he's like a guy like Mario who wants to bring his pro. I mean, it's not like OSU has, by the way, been in the bottom of the barrel, the dregs of college football. But there is a major hump in the name of Michigan that is standing in their way the last couple of years, and they have not been able to win a championship since 2014. Now, out of the hypothetical simulator and into reality, you know, statistically, Ohio State has a clear advantage. Whether it's the better team statistically, or whether you look down the roster, they have the deeper depth. They're the team that's pretty much going to win. So let's start thinking: how does Notre Dame win this game? Like, what do you think are the keys to Notre Dame winning this game?
Man, as much as I don't want to imagine that, it's just doing what they've been doing. It's playing really, really good defense and kind of doing what Georgia Tech did to Miami to bring us all back home.
Yeah,
Hold on, run clock, run the ball because
that's what I have
Riley
as well.
Yeah, is Riley Leonard is basically just yeah, I'm so emotionally scarred by that game that I don't even want to think about Georgia Tech quarterback name Haynes King. Just came back to me.
Yep.
You're basically running that playbook together. If you could just get chunk play after chunk play, because again, the one thing we've talked about, I think Ohio State has, overcome every criticism that we've had and that everybody's had about them not being tough enough after that loss to Michigan and also their earlier loss to Oregon. But the blueprint to beat them is out physical them. No one's been
Yeah.
able to do it since those two games, but that's the way that I would expect Notre Dame to do it and to force a couple turnovers, lock down those receivers. Uh, because Ohio State doesn't necessarily have the running game. I think what we talked about, and you mentioned this earlier in other episodes, Chris, but Brian Kelly is kind of like broken out of that shell of being like, I have to be the Ohio State offensive coordinator and run
Chip
the ball
Kelly.
all the time. Chip Kelly, yes.
Yes.
Yes. To say I can open up the playbook and run the offense I like to and
Hmm.
throw the ball over the place to Ibuka, to Jeremiah Smith, throw it up there. They're going to catch it. There's nobody better than them out there.
Yeah.
That's the only thing. So if they could be the other gold, helmeted team, Georgia Tech, that's how to do it.
Yeah, I have three. Mine's a three-headed monster, two of which revolve around injuries. So the first one is they have to play keep away, ground and pound against that OSU D line, and avoid making those mistakes on the O line because they'll be the left tackle that they're going to be replacing, who was injured in the last game. Even if he comes in at 80%, you've got edge guys on that Ohio State defense that are studs. I mean, and if you thought that what's his name from Penn State, who's that? Who's their edge rusher?
Oh, I know you're talking about. Yeah. That
Abdul
name,
Carter. Abdul Carter. If you thought
first
Abdul
round
Carter
draft
was,
pick.
if you thought that guy was a menace, they've got two of them at Ohio State. So it's to me, it's like they've got to ground and pound. They got to play that run game, do exactly that. It was so funny you mentioned that's exactly what I was thinking. As terrible as it is, clearly we're disturbed and scarred from that Georgia Tech game. They got to play that Georgia Tech playbook. Just keep the ball out of Will Howard and Jeremiah Smith's hands. Don't let them get on the field. Keep them on the sidelines as long as possible. And then the O line has to at least give Riley Leonard a few seconds, because if Riley Leonard, when pressured and when the guys get in the backfield, one of the worst. I think he's like 120th in the league. When he's clean and when he's not as pressured, he's like 36th. So like the guy definitely does better when there's zero pressure. He can make some moves, but again, to me, it's you got to have a run game, which it's I don't know how they're going to do that against OSU, and you've got to keep your QB clean, give him some time. And then the third thing, they're going to need the luck of the Irish. They're going to need a crucial turnover late in the game or a crucial stop late in the game. Yeah, if Notre Dame wins, trust me, that will be one of the factors. That will be one of the things that happens in this game for them to win the national championship is they will have to either get a late turnover or a late stop that just changes the momentum of the game or seals the game for them to take it home. Now on the other side, I know this is a stupid question, but what do you think? How do you think OSU wins the championship? How does this game go?
I think they're going to force a few turnovers on defense because look, Notre Dame needs to bring a spatula with them because they
Mhm.
need to be peeling Riley Leonard off of that turf every couple of downs because they're going to run him a lot. And look, credit to the kid because he's been running all season long. And at this point, I don't know how he's being held together just because he's young and he could probably still like regenerate limbs if he
Yeah.
needs to at this point. But like they're going to wear out that quarterback. And at some point, that ball's going to come loose. I just feel like
Yeah.
against Ohio State of all teams, that's how they do it. And offensively, they could be as explosive as they want because now that they don't really have like the chains on them as they felt like they did earlier in the season, they could throw it as much as they need to. When you got two guys who are always wide open, that's a problem. If they can get a running game going, I don't know how this game could be close. This could be one of those where it's like Notre Dame's getting blown out in another national championship game. This is not the same Notre Dame team, but this Ohio State team has been on such a tear since
Yeah.
that loss to Michigan that it's totally possible that they do that again, and it pains me to say that. The only other thing that they need to do also is bring themselves raincoats and make sure that that artificial turf doesn't get too slippery. Because if Luho kicks out on the sideline before the game, it's going to be a very slippery surface, and they got to make sure to be prepared for that.
Yeah. For me, it is they got to exploit the injuries. They've got to make sure that you've got Riley Leonard who's kind of banged up. You got an O lineman, a crucial O lineman, a tackle who's banged up and is probably going to be out. You have to exploit those injuries. Defensive line with that needs to be dominant, stopping the run. Because again, you want to make sure you can get off the field and get your offense back on the field. And then obviously with their offense, very simple, get their weapons open and separated. If they can, I mean, because Notre Dame loves to play man coverage. So that can either, if I mean, Marcus Freeman believes in his guys, obviously enough to where, they run that constantly. But again, with the weapons that they have, OSU has, if they choose to play man like they have, and they can get that separation, I think it's a done deal. I think just the defense, holding the line, they don't even need to get pressure, just holding the line, and then those offensive weapons getting open and getting separation. I think that's it. I think it's a very easy win by at least, I would say, two possessions, either a 10 or 14 point game. I'm not going to make a guess because I think I just had this random thought. And it would not surprise me in the slightest because this is kind of what happened with Michigan, but maybe they learned from the Michigan game. Maybe they come in here really high and mighty and they get smacked in the face by Notre Dame.
Look, it's possible that would definitely be a death knell for Ryan Day if that
Oh,
happened.
absolutely. I mean, I get, let's, okay, game aside, because we obviously think, let's make a real prediction, okay? No scores. We know obviously Ohio State's going to win. Your prediction, what happens if Ohio State loses?
Oh man, Ryan Day is on the hottest of hot seats because this whole like, okay, he can't win the big one. You got this far. I would say that you beat Oregon. That was great, but that didn't really do anything for you in terms of the college football playoff scenario. If you played Oregon for the national title and got that over, that's great. But you did in the Rose Bowl game. They kind of moved the goalposts on him, right? Like it's sad to say that you're getting to this point, but what if you're an Ohio State fan? If it doesn't happen this year, when is it going to happen? That's the thought that I would come to
Yeah.
because if you look at the landscape of college football this year, this was your year. You've been favored to do this all year long. Yes, Oregon was always the number one team in the country because they were undefeated. They won the heads up game, but all the experts said Ohio State was the real number one team.
I
That's
mean,
what
they
they were
have
saying.
the best, they have the most talent. Their talent acquisition is
Right.
flawless.
Right. They had the most talent, the highest, NIL, number, even though Oregon's was actually higher, but everyone talked about Ohio State's number. Uh,
Right.
their whole insulated like Ohio versus the world thing that they've been doing. Like, if this wasn't the year, what year is it going to be?
Yeah.
You're never going to see, I think, as flat of a playing field in college football as they had this year in the playoff. So that's where you take it from there and say, is he safe? I don't know. There might be a coaching hire out there that says we'll find a way to make this happen if you can't do it. So yeah, that's one fallout from it. We talked about the other two. You either have to worry about Notre Dame, everybody stays home, or there's going to be this exodus where Marcus Freeman gets hired and goes to the Chicago Bears. Al Golden might go back to Penn State and be their defensive coordinator after all that, speaking of beating your alma mater. I think his name as a DC has gotten hotter in the Big Ten world, not necessarily anywhere else because of our history with Al
Right.
Golden. He's a different person, yes, but defense is different. You didn't coach defense down here.
Right.
Brian Kelly gets on the hot seat because of what's going on. I just feel like you have to really be worried if Notre Dame keeps all of their pieces together and they win, because you're going to see players say, I can go to a softer schedule, and I'll even go this far.
Okay. Give me 5 minutes to finish this.
Okay.
All right. Love you. Give me 5.
Oh,
All right. Close the door on your way out. Love you. Go ahead. You're saying, Rudy?
I was going to say the one thing that I think is really concerning out of this is if you look at the way college football has gone right now, should Notre Dame win and they keep everybody home, so let's say Al Golden doesn't get hired away, Marcus Freeman stays, you have a program that is getting $50 million a year from NBC by themselves. They're not playing in a super conference. They will never play in a super conference. If you look at the way college football is being played right now, you just learn that your first round bye means precisely nothing.
Yeah.
Because
Everyone
you
lost.
need to play to keep your momentum going to win games.
Right.
So what's the point of a super conference now?
Yeah, I think if Ohio State loses, I think Ryan Day's out for one of two reasons. Either he's fired or he himself quits. I think the pressure on him will be just too immense. I think he'll go to the NFL most likely because there's enough vacancies there that he can go there, and it's less on him. He did what he did. He did what he could do at Ohio State. It wasn't enough for them. It was. I mean, and again, just like you were saying, like if not now, then when, right? And then
Yeah.
I think on the inverse side of that, I think from an Ohio State, from a campus perspective, I think they're thinking the same thing. They're like, listen, we've given you all this time. You've had all the success. You still can't beat the team we need you to beat, right? Which is the most important game in their book, which is kind of stupid, but I get it. And then you've gotten to the CFP, 3-4 times, and you can't win. You know what I mean? It's like, it's kind of improving. Not only that, but you lost to a team. And again, and I'm not trying to poo-poo on Notre Dame, but there is no world where at the beginning of the season, I picked Notre Dame to win the college football.
No.
You know what I mean?
No.
There's no way I thought they were going to win the playoffs. There was never, especially after the Northern Illinois game, but even now, you know what I mean? Like to me, it would be probably one of the greatest upsets in the history of college football if Notre Dame wins this, So I think there's a lot at stake. I think I'm obviously gonna watch it just because there's so many great storylines in this. You have your potential first black coach winning, him possibly beating his alma mater. You have Ryan Day finally getting over that hump. I'm not cheering for either team. I don't want to see either team win, but I think there's a lot of cool storylines that go along with this. Anything we didn't cover, Rudy, that you wanted to talk about?